Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about selling a game design spec. This is actually from a question I got from Nash Kruka. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'll say Nash from now on because it looks like you may have changed your name on the account since when you asked this question and when I'm answering it. But Nash asked, if someone had the entire wiki for a game like Fallout New Vegas and approached a studio, would it even mean anything to them? Ideas are cheap, but what is a fully thought out game/in-game universe worth? It's a good question. I'm also going to point out this is another priority video. Nash asked yesterday, Sunday. I'm filming today, Monday. Since Tuesday and Wednesday is unlocked, poof, this will go up Thursday. And for Nash, tomorrow, Tuesday. I keep moving my own videos around, so I get a little confused myself. Anyway, so I have done a video about what I think ideas are worth. I'll link it below. This is more than an idea. Just to be fair to Nash, this is a lot more than just saying, hey, I had this idea about why don't we do this? This is way more. Nash has written an entire design specification. And includes all the sections I've talked about that it should have. It had a setting, a story, system mechanics. In addition to that, he's implied there's a lot of interconnection between those things. They support each other. That he's written tons of lore, detailed locations in the world. Maybe he even did concept art and included like hand-drawn top-down maps of some of the places you can go. These are all things that I've seen in detailed design specifications. So I'm going to give Nash the benefit of the doubt and assume that he's done all of that. So let me be the bearer of bad news and say you probably have less than a 1% chance of finding a buyer. I'm not going to say it's zero. You know, the same as in music when a band gets together and they're hoping to be heard and picked up and get a record deal. It happens all the time. But the number of people trying to do that is huge. And in the game industry, that number is just getting bigger and bigger. I've talked about just everybody, because of game engines being free and Steam making distribution easy, discoverability is just harder and harder and harder. So you're up against a wall. And let me tell you why most studios aren't even going to look at what you send. If you sent this, most studios will probably not respond that they're not interested, or just send it back unopened saying they won't even look at it. And I've talked about they can't look at it because if they're working on something similar, or they might work on something similar in the future, if you sent them a design doc, you're cutting them off from doing any work like that, because you can say, hey, I sent them something like this 5 years ago and here they are doing it. So a lot of them won't even look at it. So let me tell you some other reasons why, aside from that they're not going to look at what you're sending. First of all, they have their own IPs in-house. They're doing their own stuff. I mean, look at Obsidian. They have right now, they could make Grounded and Pentiment and The Outer Worlds and anything in Pillars of Eternity, like their new Avowed game. They can do all of those IPs and they don't have to pay anybody. There's no IP rights involved in doing them, and they've already made games in them, so they know that the audience is there. They have an expectation of how much it will sell. Reviews and customer feedback have told them what people want. All of these things are missing in a, hey, here's a design for a brand new game. Plus, even if they don't want to do the IPs they own, I guarantee you that almost everybody working at Obsidian and any other game studio on the planet already has their own ideas for making an IP. I guarantee you. When we did meetings at Obsidian before the Outer Worlds, where they were saying, hey, if anyone has an idea for an IP, toss it out. We want to throw together a new team. A lot of people came to those meetings. They had ideas, and some of them were really amazing. I don't want to talk about them because they're their ideas, but some of them, the meeting would end and I'd go to one of the founders and go, that was a good idea. I don't know of anything like that. That is new. It's original. And it was interesting because when it came from artists, they often were like, and here's my concept art. And it really nailed, like, this is a different kind of IP. So there, not only do some studios have their own IP, but they would rather generate their own IP than accept one from outside, and then now they're beholden to you. And let me tell you why dealing with IP owners is a pain in the butt. Without going into specifics, every single game I've made that was licensed, that used an IP from outside the company, has caused issues. Some of the issues were small. Some of the issues were huge. Fallout. We were under the GURPS license for a while, so we were limited in some things we could do. And we eventually stopped using that license because we wanted to do the things we did that turned out to be very popular that we would have had to throw away if we kept that license. Conversely, Temple of Elemental Evil was made under a license with WotC to make it both D&D 3, and it actually turned out 3.5, and based on the Temple of Elemental Evil property. I talked about in some of my videos about that, the issues we had where they changed things. They would approve something and then a year later unapprove it. They would have us remove things, and it's like, well, if we remove that, all these quests go away. Like, that person is a quest giver for 3 quests, and it doesn't make sense to move them because those quests are attached to, like, her backstory. So sometimes we moved it. That's why the Village of Nulb has far fewer quests when we ship, because we just ended up yanking out all these threads and all this stuff collapsed, and we couldn't ship with it. And without getting extra time to rethread all those quests into different characters, they were just removed. They were gone. This happened in South Park. I worked on South Park. When I came on board, it was supposed to ship in 6 months, and it shipped 3 years later, and it had already been working on for at least over a year, if not 2 years. And the biggest problem there was we would make entire levels. They were completed. They were done out. They were voice acted in some cases. They were scripted. All the quests worked. They were integrated into how the main story arc would unveil. And then a few months, one time even a year later, they decided to remove them. They don't want this anymore. That's not funny. We thought that was funny. Now we don't think it's funny, and it's gone. Whole levels. I think I said that the game would have been at least double the size, if not triple, if all the levels that we had finished had stayed in. And what hurt for me is, like, I know this hurt for everybody, but there were levels that I painstakingly debugged some boss battles that had unique, specialized attacks, timing issues. I would sit there with an animator and we'd step through it frame by frame because there were minute timing issues that had to do with animation deltas down to 1 frame. And we fixed all those, and we made them look beautiful, and they were great, and they were funny. Funny as all get out. And then 6 months later, gone. Not because there were any bugs, not because there was anything wrong with that level, and the pacing was great, the writing was great, just gone. So that's a danger you have with external IPs. You never know what the IP owner is going to decide. And this is in addition, even if you work with a great IP owner, there's additional communications overhead. You can't go down the hall and talk to the lead designer. Hey, did you mean X or Y? You usually have to write. You have to email them, maybe send them a Slack message, maybe organize a meeting so you might not meet for a day or two, and then talk, and then they say they're going to get back to you. So what would have been a 10-minute discussion done immediately when you hit that issue is now an hour discussion taking place in 3 days, and you're not going to get the answer for 2 weeks. That kind of communication overhead takes this process of making a game and just throws a wrench in the gears. It just slows it down. Now, the other reason I want to depress you and tell you here's why you're up against a lot. I know studios right now, this is the summer of 2024, who have their game, they have working prototypes. One has two have vertical slices of their games. One has an entire alpha, meaning they have the entire game working. Some of the levels aren't quite finished. Some of the side quests aren't in, but they have the entire alpha of that game. Those studios are still looking for funding. They're still shopping it around. So this isn't just a spec. I mean, they had the spec 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They have an entire working game beyond a demo, and they still are having trouble finding funding. So obviously right now, my recommendation to Nash would be take your spec and make a demo. Now, if you cannot make a demo, which I think you said, or for some of you, if you just, you will not. It's really what you're saying when you say you cannot, you're really saying you will not. Because I've told you, there are game engines for free. You can buy art. You can buy scripts. You can buy user interface templates, so you can get stuff working really quickly with a minimal amount of effort and knowledge on your part. If you don't want to do that, Nash did mention, hey, could I take this spec and turn it into either a book or a tabletop RPG? Yes, that is a good idea. And not just because it shows you're willing to do that level of work, and also because for you, maybe that just fits in better with your own personal skill set. You're a good writer, or you are really good at imagining this thing as a physical layout, and you can get it produced by one of the many companies apparently that now manufacture tabletop board games. So that's a good idea. I'm also going to tell you it's a good idea for other reasons. This will instantiate your idea, whether it's a book or a tabletop game. Instantiated ideas can be copyrighted. Ideas cannot be copyrighted. Instantiated ideas can be. That's the whole thing about copyright. You can't just go up to the copyright office and say, I had this really good idea for a new toaster. They want to see it instantiated. They want to see technical specs. They want to see this is what it would look like. This is how it would work. And you can't just go, I had this idea. So if you write a book or make a tabletop RPG, you can copyright that. And then at the very least, you have got your idea, your instantiated idea, protected with copyright law. But even better, if that book or that tabletop RPG sells, you can show a prospective buyer to make a video game out of it that you have an audience. Hey, here are these people who bought the book, who bought the tabletop RPG. They may like a game out of this. There's already an audience for this. So, this sounds like a lot of work. It is a lot of work. Welcome to game development. I don't believe the era where someone has a great idea, goes to a company, they snatch it up for millions and make a game that sells tens of millions. I don't think that happens anymore. And if it does, I guarantee you, it's less than 1% of the total number of submissions that game companies get. So, Nash, that was a great question. I hope you found my answer constructive and not too demoralizing. But I wanted to be truthful here and tell you kind of like these are the odds of what you're up against, and here's what I suggest you do. So I hope that helps.